We're off. Okay. So the Rethinking Assessment movement has a website, and I'm going to take you on a tour of some of the amazing things that are happening across the world. And I want to talk about assessment because assessment so often gives us a clue about what we value in schools. And there are some very significant trends going on at the moment in terms of how we might do this. And our movement is about valuing the full range of a child's strengths. So the true purpose of assessment, as far as I'm concerned, is to ensure that we are improving learning, to ensure that what we're tracking is as broad as possible, and of course to be smart and to recognize that there are a whole range of real-time and real-world ways in which we can honor what the children we teach and support can do. And as I take you on this tour, I'm hoping it's going to help you think about some of the things that you might consider using. And above all, just as this is a great movement that Flora has started, that you might want to come and join us. I don't know, this is one of the books that you kindly mentioned, Flora, but it's a sort of statement from my friend and colleague Guy Claxon and I. We imagine the film Educating Rita, and the fictional Rita has a granddaughter and she's in your school. And we're asking the question, as the slide suggests, so what is it that children really need to learn? And as well as the maths and science and geography and dance and drama and sport and all those subject disciplines, we argue that there are 7 C's, are shorthand for a wide, expansive, inclusive education that all young women and young men need to acquire as they go through school. Now, that's not just me saying that. If you look at what the World Economic Forum has been saying pretty consistently for the last nearly a decade now, that they'll be talking, and you'll see at the top of your screen here, about all the things that appear on a school timetable, the foundational literacies, and then some things they call competencies, and some things they call character qualities. Now, there are all sorts of different models and different ways of describing these, but my argument is very simple, that we need these things, and we need young people who are creative, able to solve problems, communicate well, collaborate well, have curiosity, and all those other good words on the right of the screen. It's great when the World Economic Forum and your own writing collide, and we're all using words beginning with the letter C. There's a much bigger literature underpinning our choice of these kind of words, but maybe not for this morning, because my focus, as I said, is on assessment, because so often assessment drives the way we behave in schools. And my core argument is that fundamentally GCSE, if you're listening from a secondary perspective, is an outdated, expensive, unreliable, and unhelpful exam. A-levels have some merit, but I think we need to think about the breadth, and SATs only focus on a small part of what most of us believe really matters in education. Now, here the tour begins. And as we go around the world, I'm hoping you're thinking, yeah, I'd like to have a look at that. Or I wonder how we could track the development of character in our schools. So here are 2 examples, both from the States. The KIPP school, charter school movement, and the VIA Institute on Character, both of which, often drawing on the work of people like Angela Duckworth and Martin Seligman, are showing how we can value and acknowledge and track the development of young people's character. And you'll see just 2 examples of those. And if you Google either of those words, you'll see the kind of tools and processes that you might choose to use. One of my roles at the moment is to be co-chair of a new PISA test, a test of creative thinking. Was to have been in the summer of 2021, but because of the pandemic will now be in, we hope, 2022. And every 3 years, as well as English, maths and science, PISA focuses on something that there is growing evidence for, and they want to show can be valued, can be assessed. Now, creativity or creative thinking, something that's very much a special subject of mine. You might say, well, it's not possible. And this is not the time to take you on a journey to show what wonderful things schools are doing, largely assessment for learning, not assessment of learning. So largely formative, not summative. But we've managed to come up with a formula. If you want to look at the working document, there it is on the page on the right. And we'll be looking at expressions of creativity that are written, that are visual, that are located in science, because we want to challenge the association that creativity is just about the arts. The arts have a special role, but not the only role. And then by social, we mean common sense. So all the aspects of your life where you might be using your creative thinking in some way. Now, it's not just PISA doing this. I work a lot with schools in Australia, sadly not this year, except virtually. And here, the first ever tests were in Victoria, in Melbourne, and were run by the Victorian Curriculum Assessment Authority. And they now routinely test their young people's creativity, or they call it critical thinking and creativity. Here's the local newspaper that produced a supplement for parents, trying to explain the kind of purposes behind this test. If you're in Australia, then the national body, ACARA, specifies what the development of critical and creative thinking looks like over the entire period of formal schooling. The Victorian curriculum has simplified that somewhat, and you'll see this is tracked over 2-year periods. I think this is really interesting. If we're going to take these things seriously, we might want to begin to imagine what development and progression might look like. You may have heard in my language that I'm often not saying assess, I'm saying track the development of, or track the progress of, because I think that's what we're really talking about. Let's move now into Canada. Although Michael Fullan's work on new pedagogies for deeper learning is widely used across the world, if you Google this too, you'll see some terrific instruments and processes and a really nice combination of assessment and pedagogy. Here is Michael's work on collaborative progression. Don't forget that in schools, although in life we value what people do in teams and socially and collectively, in schools, it's still largely a heroic endeavor. I think that's got to change. It's silly. It's only valuing a small part of what we need to know. In the UK, there's a good model called Skills Builder, again, which if you want to have a look, that is trying to connect the world of school with the world of employment. I want to show you 3 schools. They all happen to be secondary schools, and I'm choosing secondary because I think it's hardest there. By the time you get to secondary, you become a teacher of a subject. In primary, you're a teacher of children. Here is one of my favorite schools. This is Rooty Hill High School in the western suburbs, in a very difficult, socio-economically difficult part of Sydney, in the western suburbs. And here they've made me my own, because I hang out with them so much, my own portfolio, what they call a learning hub. And I, as student, then upload examples of all the things I'm getting good at. And you'll see the kind of process being used there. It's very simple, but it starts to allow me to see that my talents extend much more broadly than perhaps I first thought. Closer to home here, this is Thomas Tallis School in South London. Google Tallis Habits, and you'll see the fruits of a 7-year collaboration between us and the very wonderful staff at Thomas Tallis School. There's our model of creativity in use, in action in that school. My third school example is an independent school, Bedales School, and Alma Conville from Bedales, along with my friend and colleague Peter Hyman from Big Education. We're the 3 behind the Rethinking Assessment campaign, although interestingly, lots of other names you'd recognize there, not least of which Ken Baker, who invented GCSEs, now saying they're no longer fit for purpose. Some really thoughtful writers like Sarah Jane Blakemore, you probably know the Teenage Brain, neuroscientist, other educational figures like Dame Alison Peacock and Jeff Barton. It's a growing movement because all of us believe that we need to do something. We need to fix assessment so that it more truly values the things that we know are important. Bedales has developed its own assessed courses at level 2, so GCSE, and Bedales students can go on and they can count them if they choose to go on to university. They appear on the UCAS menu. That's the screenshot you've got on the page here. Now, there are lots of other things and lots of other processes that you could be using. One particular interest of mine, and here you can find examples from across the world, in the States, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada, and there's one example here in the UK, the extended project qualification, where we're starting to recognize that sometimes we want our kids to go deep over time and to take ownership for and to really undertake an extended project. Two just very practical examples. The extended project qualification also exists at level 2, so GCSE level, if you're a secondary school teacher or leader watching this. Really interesting idea, a way of getting at some of the other things that young people do that we might want to value. You're probably familiar with No More Marking, Daisy Christodoulou and others, looking at the role of technology, especially in looking at open-ended writing and how we can use effectively AI to get a more accurate and a more responsive kind of marking. Now, it seems to me, and I'm nearly done, all points are leading to some kind of digital portfolio, to some kind of balanced scorecard. It's what's used in business. Why are we not using it? Why are we still hanging on to single digit or single grade exams or scores when we want to show so much more about what our children and young people can do? There's so many different kinds of digital portfolios, and you can see on this slide, I don't need to summarize them, that they can be used in so many different ways. I'm particularly interested in the middle one there, that they can be used to show work in process, work in progress, because that's where so much of our learning is going to be situated. I'm particularly interested in the work that Voice 21, originally School 21, have been doing in the promotion and assessment of oracy. You'll see we're coming round the full circle of all Ruby's 7 C's. Each in a different way has featured in this Cook's tour of international approaches to assessment. If you play a musical instrument, you will perhaps have sat a test, and whether it's a classical musical instrument or you're a rock musician, you take that test when you're ready. I wonder how long we're going to stick with performances on hot summer afternoons if you're in the UK. Well, if it is hot, one-off events, because I think we're moving in a very different direction, and about time too. In the States and in Australia, there are two really interesting movements, broadly speaking, talking about transcripts. So the image here is not of a mark, but of a story. And I'm so pleased that we've got a story graphicist taking notes visually as we're going today. And I think telling our stories in detailed, rigorous ways is of much more interest to us as a learner and to those we're going on to learn and work with. There is a proof of concept here. It's called the IB, the International Baccalaureate. All of those interesting things that you can see in that little word, a splodge in the middle, are really important IB characteristics. The IB profile about being inquiring, knowledgeable, thinking, caring, open-minded. The IB is currently reviewing its approach, and we think there may be a model there that we may want to use ultimately. So thank you for listening. If you've not yet filled your Christmas stockings up, here are a few none too subtle ideas. Most recently, Zest for Learning, an attempt to get all children to have an opportunity to burn brighter, and, because it's never an either or, and of course to do well in all the necessary tests of their progress that we throw at them right now. Here are a few websites if you're interested. That's my 15 minutes. I'll stop sharing now. Thanks so much for listening.